Hello, hello. Welcome to Clear Money Talk. I'm your host, CEO and founder of Clear Financial Partners, Tim Clairmont. As always, our wondrous co-host, Mr. Tyler Andrews.
Thank you, Tim. It's good to be here. Podcast studio, recording a podcast, more entertainment, more information for all of you. So thank you for tuning in. As always, we got a jam-packed episode of cool stuff to share.
Can't wait. I'm so excited. As always, I have no idea what the topic is. So we will, you know it already because you clicked on this particular episode, so you know the title of it. I do not know it. I'm going to find out here shortly.
That's like saying the sky's blue too.
I know. Well, only for regular listeners. If you're a new listener, that's new for you. So
that's fair.
But hopefully there's no new listeners. I'm sure it's just like the entire world is listening for the 4th or 5th or 20th time because this is clearly so popular.
Yeah. Well, we were just talking about that. We do have a lot of very loyal listeners, which we appreciate. Those
thank you so much.
The cornerstone to the podcast. We appreciate you. We appreciate you sharing it with everybody else out there that you care about and you trust. And we just want to continue to bring good stuff for your viewership experience.
That's the vision.
Yep.
That's the vision.
Ready for the topic?
Yeah. What you got for me?
Okay. This will be fun.
Okay.
Will AI change the way you invest?
Oh, interesting.
You know it was coming.
Yeah, I do.
The listeners knew it was coming eventually.
Oh, boy.
Will AI change the way you invest?
Man, I can really nerd out on this one. This is going to be a lot of fun. So, okay. Yeah, AI, of course, for those of you who aren't maybe paying much attention to this stuff, I mean, AI, artificial intelligence, is sort of a general term that we're using right now for a lot of LLMs, which are large language models, generally that came out. I would say ChatGPT was the first one that came out along these lines. And in many ways, I see it as a calculator for language. It takes some basic information referred to as prompts, and then it produces a significant output that is just really, really phenomenal and blows your mind. I mean, whether it's emails that it can craft for you to, full-on papers, which is one of the challenges with some of the teachers trying to deal with plagiarism and stuff like that with kids, figuring out where does that fit, to all kinds of other opportunities, including the ability to talk back and forth now with some of these LLMs and have an even more natural conversation that can result in some really significant output. We've used it now for ideating, coming up with ideas and soundboarding various thoughts for the last couple of years, and there have been a lot of neat insights there. But people are starting to lean on AI, these LLMs, to get answers to a lot of questions that they're curious about. Frankly, mental health and physical health have been surprising boons in this area. People are having conversations with AI or sharing this information with AI to try to get answers to their questions that they're struggling to get from other resources that are more scarce, i.e. a doctor or another mental health professional. And it's cheap to free to get this information. I would say that financial services is another area where you might look at AI to try to get some of that information because it's very inexpensive for you to get quick access to a lot of good stuff. And there is good stuff there. There's a lot of great educational knowledge that you can obtain from these LLMs, from this artificial intelligence. But to answer the question, which is fundamentally, go ahead and repeat it, please.
Will AI change the way you invest?
Will it change the way you invest? I think that there's absolutely zero possibility of it not changing the way you invest.
I was going to say, the answer to the podcast is yes.
Yeah, it's going to change the way you invest. Absolutely. I think it's going to change the way you make decisions about investment choices. I think it's going to educate you so quickly in the ways that we keep trying to educate. We work so hard to educate our clients about things that we can take them for granted because we understand them. I mean, I've been doing this for 28 years. Tyler's been with me for almost a decade. And, we've been studying it even before that because we were studying it in college and, we're kind of nerds. We were probably studying it before college too. The point is, we only there's just us. If you have this conversation with us as clients, that's beautiful. But you can't get your questions answered by us personally, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. But you can get questions answered by AI in that kind of availability and virtually free or very inexpensively. So getting those questions answered for the things that you're curious about, just for real-time satisfaction, I think is key. And you'll be a more informed investor when you then work with your financial professional to be able to say, hey, this is what I heard, this is what I wrote, this is what can we discuss what the implications are of this? And you're going to have that more informed discussion with your financial advisor, similar to having a more informed discussion with your doctor or a more informed discussion with your psychologist or whatever other resource you might use for your own mental health or other categories along these lines. But just like they won't let AI prescribe you medication. It's just you need that doctor to do that, and they similarly a psychologist or a psychiatrist should be weighing in on your personal human levels in a final capacity. I would argue a financial advisor also should be there to validate and ultimately help you prescribe the right plan, the right strategy, the right investment approach for you at a human level. There are some nuances that, at least at this point, I don't think AI can satisfy. That having a financial professional involved, not to mention the things that we know that don't come up on the AI. AI is going to answer a lot of the basic things. That's just the tip of the iceberg. It's probably the top 30%, maybe the iceberg. The other 70%, it might be able to answer some of that 70%, but you have to know to ask the right questions. And if you don't ask the right questions, that 70% just stays forever underwater, not mined. And you're just getting the answers to the 30% of the questions you know to ask that you're thinking about that are sort of obvious to you. But a lot of this is not just the knowledge that's there under that 70%, it's also knowing to even ask for that knowledge so that you can apply it. And when you work with a professional, they can look at your case and say, hey, there's this piece down here that's rare, that's unique, that's best for you to give serious consideration to. And that's not something that I think AI is going to be doing anytime soon.
Yeah, I think that lays a great foundation for the podcast. And
Cool.
I don't think we would be recording this if we were concerned that an AI was going to replace us.
Yeah, not worried about that.
Which I think a lot of people right now are scared. We're recording this August 11th, 2025. So 5 years down the road, we might look back to this podcast and say, what were you doing?
5 months down the road.
5 months. I mean, things are moving that quickly.
They are moving that
fast. But
fast.
I don't believe that certain industries there's a concern for it, especially with financial services. Now, I think AI technology has been already in this industry for a long time now.
Yeah.
I mean, robo-advisors have been a thing for a long time. Algorithm-driven, like stock trading. I mean, things like that have existed for a while, and you can lean into AI for those things. But like Tim said, AI has blind spots, and it doesn't have that personal touch, which many people still value. And I think that's really where value from working with a real person comes into play, is to know the personal touch, the emotional side of it, and also try to avoid those blind spots. People say it all the time, AI hallucinates, and it's a real thing. It makes things up, it thinks it's correct, and it will give an answer it's very confident in, which might make you confident in its response, but you have to know when it's right, when it's wrong, and knowing your own, having your own baseline knowledge with this stuff is helpful to catch it in those situations. So let's talk about maybe where it excels, AI excels,
Okay.
where it falls short,
Okay.
and go from there. Because to answer the question, will AI change the way you invest? It's good to know where it will and where it won't, and where it falls short and all that. So,
Okay, I like that. I think that's a great framework for that discussion. Where it falls short. Even the hallucinations. I appreciate what you just articulated there. That's something that people have been talking about for a good couple of years. About the fact that the LLMs can communicate something that seems to be true because of how vehemently the LLM communicates it. It seems like, oh, this is the truth. I mean, it says 2 + 2 = 4, and it just feels like, oh, that must be true. And it'll say 2 + 2 = 5 just as confidently in this example. And that's what we might call a hallucination, because it's clearly not true, and yet it's communicated as if it is true. And I've just noticed in some of the more recent releases, I mean, it is early August of 2025 right now. ChatGPT 5 just came out. Grok 4 just came out in the last month. And the enhancements that have occurred on these LLMs have significantly reduced the percentage of hallucinations. And you might think that, oh, well, now that they're not hallucinating as much anymore, it must be safe. And then you just disregard everything that we just talked about. And I do think that the hallucinations will decrease. You'll see less of the 2 + 2 = 5 over the months ahead, over the years ahead, and maybe that will become a thing of the past. But just because it may not hallucinate in the near future doesn't mean that it has all the right answers for all the right questions. And being aware of where it's going to excel, as Tyler said, and where it's going to fall short, I think is a really excellent framework for putting a fence on our conversations. Where it excels, I'm a big AI junkie. It's easy for me to lean into that. I think that if you want to learn the why behind anything, I think it's a phenomenal place to ask the why. So if maybe it's like, hey, my financial planner told me I shouldn't take out more than 4% per year of my portfolio in my retirement years. Why? Can you explain to me why? The AI will give you a lot of rationales for that. Of course, your financial planner can also give you those rationales, but you might have that why question in the middle of the night at 3 a.m, and your financial planner, you can't get them on the phone. So you can hop on your phone and say, hey, you know what? My financial planner said this. Why would they say that? What's good about this? What's not good about this? Make sure when you're putting in your questions, if you're going to have that conversation with AI, that you shape AI's response to give you as objective a response as possible. Have it give you what what it agrees with and what it doesn't agree with, so you can kind of see both sides. Where I would say on the other side of the fence, it doesn't excel in this particular area, is it is very, I guess the servile in a way, is probably the best word that comes to mind. It will try to make you happy in many cases. And therefore, if you put a prompt in that says, hey, tell me why this thing is bad, it will only tell you why this thing is bad, because that's the way you put in the question. You say, tell me why this thing is good, it'll tell you why this thing is good. It won't automatically offer you the good and the bad to try to give you a more objective response the way that a human might. It will take exactly the instructions you've given it, and it will give you output to satisfy those instructions. So if you plug in inaccurate stuff, don't be upset if your output is also slightly inaccurate or biased. That bias didn't probably come from the AI. It probably came from the way you asked the AI the question. So that's something to be very careful of. Whereas a financial advisor or a professional, I think in any professional industry, is less likely to change their opinion, their thoughts, their recommendations, their advice based on the way you asked a question. They have a belief set, they understand your circumstances, and they're going to make sure that they give you the right answer. AI is very responsive to adjusting based on the way you've asked it.
That's a great point. I've never really considered that. It really regurgitates what you ask of it, and it doesn't take a lot of other things. It doesn't say, well, I thank you for asking that question, Tyler, but what else? What about this other thing that you didn't ask, or did you consider this? It doesn't do that.
Yeah.
At least not yet.
Yeah, and I think there are opportunities where it might do that, and it is starting to do some of that, but I think that's where it's weaker. It's definitely a weakness of AI, because it can be a strength if you need something to create validation for you. You just need to hear something, positive reasons why you should continue to feel the way you feel. I think validation is a very valuable, output benefit that comes from AI, because sometimes we need validation, and that's fine. We don't really want to rethink what we believe. That's where faith comes into play. You may have a faithful belief in something, and you don't want to have a discussion with somebody else about questioning what you believe in. And if you have belief in something that you just believe and you want to be validated so you can strengthen that belief, I think AI can do a great job at that, because it won't push, it won't argue against you. It'll tell you, absolutely, here's all the reasons why you should feel good about that decision you've already made. But that's also why it's so important that when you're dealing with financial planning and your investment choices and your strategies, that you don't skew and put your finger on the scale of getting that feedback. You really have to get objective feedback to make good investment decisions, and that really is literally what you're doing when you're prompting inaccurately. You're putting your finger on the scale, and of course, you shouldn't be surprised when the result turns out where you put your finger. So,
yeah, that's well said.
Yeah,
you feel good about where it excels and where it falls short.
Yeah. What else you got? Anything else
on that?
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing that it excels at is it doesn't need to sleep. People need to sleep. People have energy. People have bad days. People have good days.
You sleep, Tyler? I don't
know.
understand.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? I don't.
I got a solid 7 hours last night, man. I'm feeling good.
I know. I got a crown. I got like a 93 or something like that on my.
That's good.
My Aura ring. I know. It's one of my highest Aura ring scores.
Good for you. I'm proud of you.
Anyway, wearable devices with AI are pretty phenomenal nowadays too. It's like it's going to be so cool to see where our world is in another 6 months, let alone 6 years.
I know. It's crazy.
But I'm sorry. What else? I digress.
It doesn't need to sleep. Humans need to sleep.
Yep.
Humans have bad days, good days, and AI is always constant as far as that stuff's concerned. So if you're somebody that needs like a 24/7 monitoring type of a thing, or you're a stock trader or something like that, you might see benefits from AI in those two situations. But
interesting. You talk about a stock trader. I mean, publicly available information is going to be communicated to you through that AI. But insights related to some of the trends and the patterns are things that are not likely to be communicated by AI. And it's ultimately some of those insights that traders and portfolio managers are really leaning on and making some very key decisions. So you are oftentimes just getting, Tuesday morning football reports from Monday Night Football when you're talking with AI. When you're working with a financial advisor real time, you're in the game. I mean, it's Monday Night Football and you're in Q1 or Q2 and you're just sitting there and you're just doing your discussions, and you get to be the coach and you get to tell the financial planners how you want to play the game. With AI, you're always the next day looking backwards at where everything has been, and the forecasting it will give tons of caveats for why you shouldn't count on these forecasts for blah 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 for all kinds of reasons. Which same thing with a human as far as financial advisors, but you can be a little closer to the game if you're working with a human.
Fair. And then that's a nice natural switch into the next one, which is the risks of blindly following AI, which a lot of people do. And I think we're going to see it more and more, especially as these younger generations grow up and have had AI as part of their resources for much of their life. They'll lean into it more and more for validating everything they do in life. And I think we're already starting to see that with some people making financial decisions, basically asking, how do I allocate my portfolio? What should I do with my 401k? How do I retire at this age? And just taking the outputs from the generative AI and relying on it 100%. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a huge risk with it, is not fully understanding it, just blindly overconfidence in the AI's ability to produce a good output and kind of just rolling with it, not fully understanding it.
I love that you said that, Tyler, because it really triggers something in my head as I think about the generational gaps in what was experienced in your childhood as a listener to this versus your teen years versus your 20s and 30s and 40s versus my childhood versus Tyler's childhood versus the new children that are being born today that are going to experience their childhood. And my point in this case is many of the baby boomers and traditionalists that may have already retired or are already retiring now didn't necessarily grow up with the internet available in their elementary school years or their teenage years. The internet came out later for them, and so there's a lot of different normal things, and many of them have adapted to the internet. Of course, we all kind of take it for granted now in a big way. So I'm not saying that that's not the case, but the Gen Xers like myself, we actually had the internet access and video games and all that stuff in our teens. We started to get internet access earlier within our 20s, and so we've had a different level of experience. Millennials, I would say, like Tyler, were born into that experience, so they had some of that. The new children who are being born into this new AI world, we're already seeing this phenomenon of kids, like single-digit kids, are able to access the phone and talk on their, talk with the AI, and they're relying on the AI to answer tons of stuff in their lives and make decisions for them rather than them making their own decisions. My point is that I think the Gen Xers and the millennials like Tyler and I are uniquely positioned, potentially for the last time in history that will exist as we go forward, to have been on both sides of the fence so that we can actually see the AI coming in and still question the AI and be skeptical about what the output is like and get you as an investor the best ultimate conclusion. I think in 30 years everyone's a lot of people will follow what the AI has to say, more like sheep, and I think you're less likely to get that now from people that are actively involved in these industries in that Gen X or millennial capacity, because we've been on both sides. We've seen it both ways. It's going to be a new world in 30 or 40 years where people are not going to have seen it before AI.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. We're like the Resistance from Star Wars,
Oh, I like that.
We're like a small group that's just battling the huge mega force that exists.
Oh, that sounds horrible. I don't want to beat the Empire. It's fine. That sounds like a really painful experience. I don't want to be a rebel warrior, but
it does.
It is.
We were here before the Empire.
But we're going to work together with the Empire.
That's right.
Case. The Empire's going to be amazing.
With the Empire.
There we go.
You find the good and the bad and everything in between.
Right. It's like Red 5. I'm going in, but I'm going to be supported while
yeah. All right, let's bring this to somewhat of a close here.
Sure. Great.
Before we get to just the answer. So will AI change the way you invest? I don't want people to leave the podcast and being like, Tim and Tyler either love AI and they're saying I should lean into it, or they hate AI and we should just work with them because they're looking for great clients, which we're always looking for good clients. Yeah. But I think it's somewhere in between those two ends. And I don't want us to say one side is good and one side's bad. So what is the best way to incorporate AI? Because I think most people are like, I don't want to fully lean into it, but I don't want to ignore it. So how do I incorporate it and use it to my advantage, because it's there for the taking? And if something's there to make your life better in any which way, you might as well take advantage of it if you have the resources for it.
Yeah.
So what do you think? Someone's like, well, just give me the nuts and bolts here, Tim Tyler. What is the best way for me to use AI to better myself, better my financial
Well,
picture?
in this case, in the financial planning realm, I just think having conversations with it around your questions and thoughts are not a bad thing. And I do mean literally conversations. You can, with ChatGPT and some of the other LLMs now, you can literally, have a conversation back and forth rather than even having to type your answers and discuss what your questions are. And have AI help you organize your thoughts. I think that's one of the best values that it can bring to you. You have a lot of emotions and thoughts probably around investing and money and everything else. You don't have to organize that first with AI. You can literally just hit go and then just spew out everything you're thinking in terms of your verbal communication, and then say, now AI, or can you please organize this in terms of what's most important to me based on your knowledge of my situation, and tell me, priorities 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then you can even say, hey, are there 5 questions or 10 questions you think I should ask my financial advisor that will help us have an even better relationship? I mean, these are the kinds of things that you can do with AI, and I would encourage you to lean into that. What I don't think you should use AI for is to stock pick. Like, I think that, and it'll give you a lot of pushback on that. You can do some research, you can get some insights, but what to buy, when to buy, what to sell, when to sell. I don't think it's got the solution for everybody yet there, and I think that that accessing that, and then the tax efficiency associated with your unique situation, and predicting the impact of taxes in the future as a lifetime taxation for you, not just taxation this year or next year, but over your lifetime. Those are the kinds of things that are a little bit more esoteric, that are harder for AI to weigh in on. So, but helping you better understand what you're curious about, I think it's a huge resource for that.
Yeah, that's well said. It's just another tool.
Mm-hmm.
We use tools all the time: calculators, Excel, Microsoft Word, emails. I mean, all these different tools. This is just another tool.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the smartest people know how to blend new stuff, new tools, with proven ways of doing things, proven strategies. So
Love it.
You mesh those two, I think you'll be well positioned.
Yeah. Well, this is a fun topic. Honestly, I could nerd out on this topic
We could
for a
keep
very
going.
long, very, very, very long time. The insights with AI and everything. You've touched on 3% of the iceberg that I've explored in the AI world of the last few years.
Yeah.
But to answer and keep it tight with this question, I think we should probably do just the answer and bring it home.
That sounds good. Let me reiterate it, and Tim will take it home for us.
I see how that's going.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
So topic of the day was, will AI change the way you invest? Tim, do you want the headers for what we talked about, and then you can kind of just brain dump?
Why don't we, yeah, sure, go for it.
Okay, so we talked about AI's kind of already in the financial world, talking about how it exists with robo-advisors and otherwise.
You want to do one at a time?
Yeah.
Okay, that'll work. So here's just the answer. So yes, AI has already existed with robo-advisors and all that stuff. Fundamentally, AI is advancing so quickly. The exponential growth rate is phenomenal. We talked a lot about how using it will absolutely change the way you invest. Fundamentally, bottom line, 100%, it will change the way you invest. But how it changes the way you invest will be personal to each individual based on how you're using it, and be wary of using it in certain ways and lean into using it in other ways. And I think the best way you can use it is for organizing your own thoughts, getting some clarity on the right kinds of questions to be asking, helping you prioritize what matters the most or matters the least in your situation, giving you some insights there, and then doing research, asking research questions like why when it comes to understanding more of the behind the scenes. Ultimately relying on it to tell you what to do, I think that's the folly that is a risk that people will likely do, but probably shouldn't do, because it would just be like having a conversation with your computer and then ultimately trying to have your computer prescribe prescription medications for you based on your own self-diagnosis of your medical circumstance. It's the same thing with financial planning. You should ultimately lean on that financial professional to weigh in, because there are a lot of things that AI does not give you the answers on because you didn't ask right, you didn't know how to ask right. There might be some subtle things associated with your circumstance that would have been massively needle moving in your plan, and they're just missed because you didn't have a conversation with AI, not to mention the AI hallucinations that we talked about previously. So will AI change the way you invest? Absolutely. How will it change the way you invest? I think that's going to evolve over time. but it is a phenomenal resource that will be a part of our day-to-day lifestyle.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else that we didn't cover there?
No, I think, excuse me, there's always a lot to unpack in these episodes, so I always recommend listening to the full version, especially this as a topic that you find highly interesting for yourself or your circumstances. Some people might be like, I don't want to learn about AI, just not listen to it at all. But if you were somebody that saw AI in the title and you're like, I want to listen to that, I really encourage you to listen to the full version and also watch the YouTube video so you can see our faces and our expressions and all that otherwise. But no, I think you did a good job there, Tim. And like Tim said, I think the biggest takeaway is it's evolving. We don't know what it'll look like down the road. We know what it looks like right now, and that's all we have to go off of, really. But at the end of the day, humans aren't going anywhere, especially with certain fields like ours, with the financial industry, and especially Tim and I, we're not going anywhere.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. All right. Sounds good. Let's wrap up there. As always, we close out our show with
trivia.
Stump the Nerd. What do you got?
All right. Did we stump you the last time? I think you did.
Yeah, I feel like you've been stumping me every time lately. I gotta tell you, I was feeling
over-stumped. You should pull up AI.
I would, but that feels like cheating because
it
is cheating when it comes to trivia. Okay, go for it. What do you got?
What was the name of the first chatbot ever created? So, staying on theme here, I like to stay on theme with the trivia. What was the name of the first chatbot ever created? I do have multiple choice for you. This would be difficult otherwise.
Yeah, in my head, it's like Hal from Space Odyssey
That's
or whatever, but it doesn't even count because that's not real. So it's all these fictional chatbots that come to my mind. Chatbot first created. Yeah, I'm going to need multiple choice. What do you got?
Okay. A is Siri. B is Eliza. C is Clippy. D is Hal.
That's funny. Well, I can see somebody maybe modeling Hal after Space Odyssey and maybe doing that. But then again, this could just be a trick question, in there to mess with me. I don't think I would call it Siri. I'm pretty sure Siri was later, even though certainly it was early on there. Clippy, I remember that little clip thing, and maybe that I could see that being a chat bot, the little paperclip guy with the little, that little cartoon icon thing. But I'm just going to go with Hal because that's what I said first.
All right, that's fine. Yeah, Eliza.
Well, so clearly that was a winner. We all knew that one, right?
Exactly. So this is actually fascinating.
Okay.
Developed in 1966 at MIT by Joseph Weizenbaum. Eliza simulated conversation by using pattern matching and substitution, a groundbreaking step toward modern AI assistance.
Wow.
1966.
Yeah, AI's been around for a long time. Yeah. It's just taken a long time to get to the point where it's actually mass adoptable now, which is, anyway, blowing our minds.
It is.
Thank you for stumping the nerd yet again. And
thank you for giving it as an opportunity for all of us to learn.
Yeah, so no, my pleasure. Well, thank you for joining us on Clear Money Talk. As always, we are actively seeking additional clients. Specifically, our minimum investment for new client relationships is $1 million. Most of our clients have between $1 and $5 million when they start working with us. Of course, if you have more than that, we're happy to discuss working together. But the vast majority of clients, somewhere between $1 and $5 million, they want to make sure they don't run out of money. They want to make sure that they're investing smartly, minimizing their lifetime taxes, and ultimately passing on the wealth that they want to pass on to their families if that's a priority for them, or charities or otherwise. Would love to work with you. If you're interested in a clarity call to see if you're a good fit, call us at 503-579-1000, and we would love to talk to you. Thanks for joining us on Clear Money Talk.
All right. See you on the next one.
Tim Clairmont and Tyler Andrews are investment advisor representatives offering securities and advisory services through Cetera Wealth Services, LLC, member FINRA SIPC. Advisory services offered through Cetera Investment Advisors, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Cetera is under separate ownership from any other named entity. The views depicted in this material are for information purposes only and are not necessarily those of Cetera Wealth Services, LLC. They should not be considered specific advice or recommendations for any individual. Cetera Wealth Services, LLC exclusively provides investment products and services through its representatives. Although Cetera does not provide tax or legal advice or supervise tax, accounting, or legal services, Cetera representatives may offer these services through their independent outside business. This information is not intended as tax or legal advice. All investing involves risk, including the possible loss of principal. There is no assurance that any investment strategy will be successful. Examples referenced are hypothetical only and do not represent the actual performance of any particular investments. Converting from a traditional IRA to a Roth IRA is a taxable event. A Roth IRA offers tax-free withdrawals on taxable contributions. To qualify for the tax-free and penalty-free withdrawal or earnings, a Roth IRA must be in place for at least 5 tax years, and the distribution must take place after age 59.5 or due to death, disability, or a first-time home purchase, up to a $10,000 lifetime maximum. Depending on state law, Roth IRA distributions may be subject to state taxes. Distributions from traditional IRAs and employer-sponsored retirement plans are taxed as ordinary income and, if taken prior to reaching age 59.5, may be subject to an additional 10% IRS tax penalty. Investors should consider the investment objectives, risks and charges, and expenses of mutual funds and ETFs carefully before investing. The prospectus, which contains this and other information about the funds and ETFs, can be obtained directly from the company or from your financial professional. The prospectus should be read carefully before investing or sending money. A diversified portfolio does not assure a profit or protect against loss in a declining market. Dollar cost averaging will not guarantee a profit or protect you from loss, but may reduce your average cost per share in a fluctuating market. Investors cannot invest directly in indexes. The performance of any index is not indicative of the performance of any investment and does not take into account the effects of inflation and the fees and expenses associated with investing. Although it is possible to have guaranteed income for life with a fixed annuity, there is no assurance that this income will keep up with inflation. There is a surrender charge imposed generally during the first 5 to 7 years or during the rate guarantee period. There is a surrender charge imposed generally during the first 5 to 7 years that you own the contract. Withdrawals prior to age 59.5 may result in a 10% IRS tax penalty in addition to any ordinary income tax. The guarantee of the annuity is backed by the financial strength of the underlying insurance company. Investment subaccount values will fluctuate with changes in market conditions. An investment in a variable annuity involves investment risk, including possible loss of principal. Variable annuities are designed for long-term investing. The contract, when redeemed, may be worth more or less than the total amount invested. Variable annuities are subject to insurance-related charges, including mortality and expense charges, administrative fees, and the expenses associated with the underlying subaccounts. Investors should consider the investment objectives, risks, and charges and expenses of the variable annuity carefully before investing. The prospectus contains this and other information about the variable annuity. Contact Clear Financial Partners at info@clearfp.com or 503-579-1000 to obtain a prospectus, which should be read carefully before investing or sending money. The cost and availability of life insurance depend on factors such as age, health, and the type and amount of insurance purchased. Before implementing a strategy involving life insurance, it would be prudent to make sure that you are insurable by having the policy approved. As with most financial decisions, there are expenses associated with the purchase of life insurance. Policies commonly have mortality and expense charges. In addition, if a policy is surrendered prematurely, there may be surrender charges and income tax implications. The target date of a target date fund may be a useful starting point in selecting a fund, but investors should not rely solely on the date when choosing a fund or deciding to remain invested in one. Investors should consider funds asset allocation over the whole life of the fund. Often target date funds invest in other mutual funds, and fees may be charged by both the target date fund and the underlying mutual funds. The principal value of these funds is not guaranteed at any time, including at the target date. Cetera does not offer any direct investments, endorsements, or advice as it relates to Bitcoin or any other cryptocurrency. This is for informational purposes only. Bank certificate of deposits are insured by an agency of the federal government and offer a fixed rate of return, whereas both the principal and yield of investment securities will fluctuate with changes in market conditions. Clear Financial Partners is located at 15573 Bangui Road, Suite 100, Lake Oswego, Oregon 97035. For more information, please call us at 503-579-1000.